It's late at night. You're lying in bed, and somehow your mind drifts back to the same person again, not because they're here, not because they're texting you, but because something about them refuses to leave your thoughts. The question is, what exactly are you attracted to? Them, or the feeling they awaken inside you? Most people think attraction begins when someone notices your face. It doesn't. By the time a person becomes consciously aware that they are attracted to you, the real process has already begun beneath the surface, invisible, silent, ancient, and far more psychological than most people realize, because attraction is not merely about beauty. It is not simply about status. It is not even about personality. At its deepest level, attraction is the strange and often unconscious pull towards something inside another human being that awakens something hidden inside ourselves. And that is where the mystery begins. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who wasn't technically the most attractive person in the room, yet somehow everyone seemed drawn toward them? People listened when they spoke. People remembered them after they left. People felt their presence before understanding why. Meanwhile, someone else could possess perfect looks, perfect clothing, perfect social skills, and somehow remain forgettable. Why? Because attraction does not operate according to logic. It operates according to psychology, and psychology operates largely in the shadows. Most people spend their lives trying to become attractive by improving what can be seen: the body, the image, the social profile, the reputation. But beneath all of that exists a deeper layer of human nature, a layer that evolved long before social media, long before modern dating, long before civilization itself, a layer that still whispers inside every human being today. And if you understand it, you begin to see attraction differently, not as a game, not as manipulation, but as a window into the human soul, because attraction reveals something most people desperately try to hide: what they fear, what they lack, what they crave, and what they secretly hope another person might help them become. Carl Jung once suggested that what fascinates us in others often reflects something unconscious within ourselves, something incomplete, something neglected, something waiting to be acknowledged. This is why attraction can feel irrational. You meet someone and suddenly your emotional world shifts. Nothing tangible has happened. No promises have been made. No future exists yet. Yet your attention keeps returning to them. You replay conversations. You analyze their expressions. You wonder what they think of you. You become aware of them in a way that feels almost involuntary. And perhaps the strangest part is this: you may not even understand why. The conscious mind likes explanations. The unconscious mind doesn't need them. The unconscious mind simply moves toward what feels meaningful, toward what feels alive, toward what awakens dormant emotions. And that awakening is often what people mistake for attraction itself. But attraction is rarely about the other person alone. Often, it is about who you become in their presence. Imagine a man sitting alone in a crowded cafe. Nothing unusual about him, nothing particularly dramatic about his day. Then someone walks in, a stranger. For reasons he cannot explain, his attention shifts. Suddenly the room feels different. The music seems louder, time seems slower. His mind becomes alert, not because he has learned anything meaningful about this person, but because something inside him has reacted before conscious thought could intervene. A possibility, a curiosity, a psychological spark, and from that moment forward, perception changes. The same room, the same coffee, the same day, yet everything feels slightly altered. This is one of the hidden truths about attraction. It changes not only how we see another person, it changes how we experience reality itself, because attraction activates anticipation, and anticipation is one of the most powerful emotional forces in human psychology. People often assume pleasure comes from getting what they want, but neuroscience repeatedly shows that anticipation itself can be even more powerful than reward. The possibility, the uncertainty, the question, the emotional tension between what is known and what remains unknown. This is why certainty often kills attraction, and mystery often fuels it, not because humans enjoy confusion, but because the human mind is naturally drawn toward unfinished stories. toward unanswered questions, toward emotional puzzles. A fully solved mystery rarely captures attention. An unsolved one can occupy the mind for years. This principle extends far beyond romance. Think about the people who have left the deepest impression on your life. Were they always the loudest, the most obvious, the most available? Probably not. Many of them remained partially unknown. There was something beneath the surface, something you couldn't entirely explain, something that invited exploration, and exploration creates engagement. The mind invests energy into what it has not yet fully understood. This is why attraction often begins where certainty ends. But there is another layer that runs even deeper, one that most people never recognize. Human beings are not merely attracted to strengths. They are attracted to emotional experiences, and those are very different things. A man may admire confidence, but what truly attracts him may be how confident someone makes him feel. A woman may admire intelligence, but what truly attracts her may be the emotional experience of being understood. Attraction is not just about qualities, it is about emotional impact. How someone alters your internal state, how they make you feel about yourself, how they influence the story you tell inside your own mind. This is why attraction cannot be reduced to checklists. People try. Height, looks, money, status, lifestyle. And while these factors can influence attraction, they rarely explain its deepest forms, because the strongest attractions often emerge unexpectedly, sometimes against logic, sometimes against preference, sometimes against reason itself. People frequently find themselves drawn toward individuals who do not fit their stated ideals, and that contradiction reveals something important. Humans do not always desire what they say they desire. They desire what emotionally resonates with their deepest psychological needs, needs that are often hidden even from themselves. This is where attraction becomes fascinating, because it begins revealing the secret architecture of human identity. Every person carries invisible emotional wounds, old insecurities, unspoken fears, forgotten dreams, and hidden longings. Some were created in childhood, some through heartbreak, some through loneliness, some through failure. Most remain buried beneath daily life, but attraction has a strange ability to bring them back to the surface, not intentionally, not maliciously, simply naturally, because the people who affect us most often touch parts of ourselves we rarely examine. Perhaps someone makes you feel seen, truly seen, not for your accomplishments, not for your image, but for who you actually are. Suddenly, their presence feels significant, not because they changed you, but because they revealed something you were missing, or perhaps someone embodies a quality you secretly wish you possessed: courage, freedom, discipline, authenticity, emotional strength. Their existence becomes symbolic, not merely attractive, meaningful, and meaning creates powerful attraction, far more powerful than appearance alone. This is why some relationships begin with overwhelming chemistry and eventually collapse, and why others begin quietly and grow stronger over time. Because chemistry and attraction are not identical. Chemistry often feels explosive. Attraction often feels magnetic. Chemistry excites. Attraction pulls. Chemistry captures attention. Attraction captures identity. The difference matters. Because many people spend years chasing emotional fireworks while overlooking deeper psychological compatibility, they become addicted to intensity, not connection, to excitement, not understanding, to emotional highs, not emotional depth, and eventually they discover something painful. Intensity alone cannot sustain meaning, but meaning can sustain attraction for decades. The ancient Stoics understood something modern culture often forgets. Human beings are not disturbed merely by events. They are disturbed by their interpretations of events. The same principle applies to attraction. Two people can encounter the exact same person. One becomes fascinated, the other feels nothing. The difference is not always the individual being observed. The difference is often the internal story being activated. Attraction is personal because meaning is personal. What one person finds irresistible, another may barely notice. What one person sees as confidence, another sees as arrogance. What one person experiences as mystery, another experiences as emotional distance. The external behavior remains identical, the psychological interpretation changes, and that interpretation shapes attraction. This realization becomes even more interesting when we examine loneliness, because loneliness has a profound influence on human attraction, far more than most people realize. Loneliness is not simply the absence of people. Many lonely individuals are surrounded by others. Loneliness is the absence of meaningful connection, the absence of emotional resonance, the absence of feeling understood. And when a lonely person encounters someone who appears capable of filling that void, attraction can intensify rapidly, sometimes too rapidly. The mind begins projecting, imagining, idealizing, creating stories before reality has had time to reveal itself. The person becomes larger than life, not because they truly are, but because they become a psychological symbol, a symbol of relief, a symbol of hope, a symbol of escape from isolation. This is where attraction becomes dangerous, not because attraction itself is harmful, but because projection can blind us. We stop seeing the person and start seeing our fantasy. The philosopher Schopenhauer believed that much of human desire emerges from forces operating beneath conscious awareness, forces that convince us we are acting rationally even when deeper instincts are guiding our behavior. Whether or not one agrees with all of his conclusions, there is wisdom in the observation. People often believe they are choosing, yet frequently they are being pulled by old patterns, pulled by emotional needs, pulled by unconscious narratives formed years earlier. And nowhere is this more visible than in attraction. The person who repeatedly chooses unavailable partners, the person who constantly seeks validation, the person who mistakes anxiety for chemistry, the person who confuses attention with love. These patterns rarely emerge by accident. They often reveal hidden emotional histories, stories written long before the attraction ever began. And understanding those stories may be one of the most important forms of self-awareness a person can develop. Because attraction is not only about discovering another person, it is also about discovering yourself. The people who fascinate you can teach you something. The people who trigger you can teach you something. The people you cannot forget can teach you something. Every attraction contains information, not just about them, but about you, about your fears, your desires, your values, your wounds, your unfinished psychological chapters. And sometimes the strongest attraction is not toward a person who completes you, but toward a person who exposes what remains incomplete inside you. That realization can be uncomfortable because it forces us to stop asking a simple question, why am I attracted to them? And begin asking a far deeper one, what part of myself is being awakened by them? That question changes everything because once you ask it honestly, attraction transforms from a mysterious force happening to you into a mirror revealing hidden truths within you. And what that mirror reveals is often far more profound than the face staring back from the other side. And once you begin seeing attraction as a mirror rather than a mystery, an unsettling realization emerges. Many people are not attracted to who someone truly is. They are attracted to what that person represents. A possibility, a fantasy, an escape, a missing piece of an identity they have been trying to build their entire lives. This is why attraction can feel so powerful, and why it can feel so devastating when reality eventually arrives. Because reality has a habit of stripping away projection. In the beginning, attraction often lives in the realm of imagination. The mind fills in blanks. It creates narratives. It assigns meaning to small gestures. A smile becomes significance. A glance becomes destiny. A brief conversation becomes possibility. Human beings are natural storytellers. We do not merely experience reality, we interpret it. And nowhere is interpretation more influential than in matters of the heart. Imagine a young man sitting alone late at night. The room is dark except for the glow of a phone screen. He keeps rereading old messages from someone he barely knows. Nothing extraordinary has been said. Nothing life-changing has occurred. Yet his mind keeps returning to the conversation. Why? Because attraction feeds on imagination. The known facts are often minimal. The unknown possibilities are infinite. and the human mind is remarkably skilled at transforming uncertainty into emotional investment. This creates one of the most misunderstood aspects of attraction. People assume they are drawn towards certainty. In reality, certainty often arrives much later. At first, attraction is fueled by curiosity, the desire to know, the desire to understand, the desire to uncover. Curiosity is one of the strongest emotional engines in human psychology. It is the force that drives exploration, discovery, adventure, growth, and attraction frequently borrows its power from that same source. You become curious about another person's thoughts, their history, their dreams, their fears, the private world hidden behind their public image. And that curiosity creates emotional gravity, because humans are endlessly fascinated by what remains partially hidden. This does not mean people should become mysterious on purpose. Artificial mystery is easy to detect and often feels manipulative. The attraction comes not from concealment, it comes from depth. There is a difference. Some people reveal everything immediately. Every opinion, every insecurity, every detail. Nothing remains to explore. Nothing remains to discover. Others possess layers, not because they are hiding, but because they are complex. And complexity naturally creates intrigue. The deeper the ocean, the more impossible it becomes to see its bottom. Human beings are no different. The most compelling people often possess an inner life that cannot be understood within a single conversation. This idea connects deeply to something Carl Jung called the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is not darkness in the dramatic sense. It is simply the parts of ourselves we hide, the parts we suppress, the parts we rarely show the world. And sometimes attraction occurs because another person reflects pieces of our shadow back to us. Perhaps they possess a boldness we have suppressed, a freedom we have abandoned, an authenticity we have sacrificed, a confidence we secretly wish we embodied. Their existence becomes emotionally provocative, not because they are perfect, but because they remind us of something forgotten within ourselves. This explains why attraction can sometimes feel almost irrational. You know very little about the person, yet they occupy your thoughts, not because they have entered your life, but because they have entered your imagination. And imagination is where much of attraction truly lives. Yet there is another hidden layer, one that few people discuss. Attraction is deeply connected to emotional contrast. Human beings often become invisible to one another through predictability. Not because predictability is bad, but because the brain is designed to conserve attention. It adapts quickly. What remains constant eventually fades into the background. Think about walking into your home. You rarely notice every detail. Your brain has already categorized the environment as familiar. The same thing can happen in human interactions. People become psychologically invisible when nothing about the interaction feels emotionally distinctive. But when someone creates emotional contrast, attention awakens, not through drama, not through chaos, but through presence. A calm person in a room full of noise. A thoughtful person in a world obsessed with speed. A self-controlled person among emotionally reactive people. These contrasts create psychological impact, and psychological impact often precedes attraction. One reason confidence attracts people is not because confidence itself is magical. It is because confidence creates emotional contrast. Most individuals are quietly fighting internal battles: self-doubt, insecurity, fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy. When they encounter someone who appears comfortable within themselves, it disrupts the emotional atmosphere. It creates a different psychological experience, and people remember experiences more than characteristics. This is why attraction cannot be reduced to physical appearance. Physical appearance may capture attention, but emotional experience determines whether attention remains. You can admire someone's appearance and forget them tomorrow. But if someone changes how you feel when they are around, they become difficult to forget. The memory becomes emotional, and emotional memories have extraordinary staying power. Think back to moments that shaped your life. Many of them are emotionally charged, not because they lasted long, but because they affected you deeply. Attraction follows a similar pattern. The strongest attractions often emerge from emotional significance rather than duration. A single conversation can alter perception. A brief encounter can remain vivid for years. A moment of genuine connection can outweigh months of superficial interaction. This is because human beings are emotional meaning-making creatures. We remember what touches us, what moves us, what transforms our inner experience, and perhaps nothing transforms inner experience more powerfully than being understood. At first glance, people assume attraction revolves around being desired, but beneath desire lies something deeper, the desire to be understood, to be recognized, to feel seen beyond the masks we wear. Every person carries masks: the professional mask, the confident mask, the strong mask, the independent mask, the successful mask. Most social interactions occur between masks: functional, polite, predictable. But rare moments occur when someone seems to perceive what exists beneath them. And those moments can be unforgettable, because one of the deepest human needs is not attention. It is recognition, to feel that another human being truly sees you, not your performance, not your image, not your reputation, you. This explains why emotional intelligence is often more attractive than people realize. An emotionally intelligent person notices what others overlook: the hesitation behind confidence, the sadness hidden beneath humor, the fear concealed by anger, the loneliness disguised as independence. And when someone feels understood at that level, attraction can emerge naturally, not because they have been impressed, but because they have been recognized. Recognition is powerful because it reduces isolation, and isolation is one of the great psychological burdens of modern life. We live in a world more connected than ever before. Yet many people feel profoundly alone, not physically alone, psychologically alone, surrounded by interaction, starved of understanding. The result is a quiet hunger that exists beneath everyday life, a hunger for genuine connection. And attraction often begins when another person appears capable of satisfying that hunger, not through perfection, but through authenticity. Authenticity is a word that has become overused, yet its psychological significance remains enormous. Authenticity creates trust. Trust creates safety. And safety creates emotional openness. Without safety, attraction remains superficial. With safety, attraction gains depth. The paradox is that many people spend their lives trying to appear attractive rather than trying to become authentic. They polish their image, curate their personality, manage perceptions, construct identities. Yet the more artificial the presentation becomes, the harder genuine connection becomes, because attraction may begin with image, but meaningful attraction survives through truth. And truth requires vulnerability, not oversharing, not emotional dependence, but the willingness to be real. This is where many people struggle, because vulnerability feels dangerous. The possibility of rejection always exists. The possibility of disappointment always exists. The possibility of being misunderstood always exists. And yet vulnerability remains essential because attraction is ultimately an emotional experience. Emotions cannot fully connect through armor. Sooner or later, authenticity must emerge. The philosopher Nietzsche once observed that humans often wear masks so long that they eventually mistake the mask for themselves. Modern life makes this tendency even stronger. People become brands, profiles, images, curated versions of themselves. And while these identities may attract attention, attention is not the same as connection. Connection requires something far more difficult: presence, the willingness to show up as a human being rather than a performance. Ironically, many of the traits people find attractive emerge naturally from self-acceptance rather than self-promotion. Consider the individual who no longer desperately seeks validation. Something changes. Their energy changes. Their interactions change. Their emotional state changes. Why? Because desperation repels attention while self-possession attracts it. Human beings are remarkably sensitive to emotional signals, even when they cannot consciously explain them. Neediness communicates fear. Authenticity communicates confidence. Validation-seeking communicates uncertainty. Self-respect communicates stability. These signals operate beneath language, beneath logic, beneath conscious awareness, and they influence attraction constantly. But perhaps the most surprising truth is this: Attraction is often strongest when someone appears emotionally complete without needing another person to complete them. This does not mean becoming detached. It does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean pretending not to care. It means developing a life that possesses meaning independent of external approval. People are drawn toward those who possess direction, purpose, inner stability, because these qualities create psychological safety. And psychological safety is profoundly attractive. The opposite is equally true. When someone desperately needs another person to rescue them from themselves, attraction often becomes burdened by emotional pressure. The relationship stops being about connection. It becomes about survival, and survival rarely feels romantic. This brings us to one of the darkest truths about attraction. Many people do not fall in love with another person. They fall in love with relief. Relief from loneliness, relief from uncertainty, relief from self-doubt, relief from emptiness. And when relief becomes the foundation, problems inevitably follow, because no human being can permanently solve another person's internal struggles. Eventually, reality returns, the loneliness returns, the insecurity returns, the unresolved wounds return, and the relationship begins carrying expectations it was never meant to carry. This is why self-awareness matters. The more conscious you become of your own emotional needs, the less likely you are to project them onto others, and the less likely you are to confuse emotional dependency with attraction. Real attraction does not demand that another person save you. It invites two complete individuals to explore connection together. That distinction changes everything. Because the healthiest attraction emerges not from emptiness, but from fullness, not from desperation, but from curiosity, not from fear, but from appreciation. And when attraction grows from that foundation, it becomes something far more enduring than infatuation. It becomes respect, and respect may be one of the most underestimated forces in human relationships. People talk endlessly about chemistry, passion, excitement, desire, yet relationships often survive or fail based upon respect. Because attraction evolves, beauty changes, circumstances change, emotions fluctuate, life becomes difficult, unexpected hardships arrive, and when superficial qualities fade, respect determines what remains. Respect creates admiration. Admiration creates trust. Trust creates intimacy. And intimacy creates a form of attraction far deeper than physical desire alone. The problem is that respect cannot be manufactured. It must be earned through character, through consistency, through integrity, through self-mastery, qualities that modern culture rarely celebrates as loudly as appearance or charisma. Yet those qualities often create the deepest attraction of all, because beneath all the noise, all the excitement, all the chemistry, and all the fantasies, human beings are searching for something remarkably simple, someone who feels real, someone whose presence brings peace rather than confusion, someone whose character remains steady when circumstances change, someone who does not merely attract attention, but earns trust. And trust is where attraction begins transforming into something much more powerful, something capable of surviving long after first impressions disappear, something capable of reaching depths that infatuation alone can never touch. And that deeper transformation reveals another hidden truth about human attraction, one that most people spend their entire lives misunderstanding. That deeper transformation reveals one of the most uncomfortable truths about human attraction. The qualities that initially attract us are often not the qualities that ultimately keep us connected. This is where many people become confused. They spend years trying to understand why attraction fades, why excitement disappears, why relationships change, why someone who once seemed irresistible gradually becomes ordinary. The answer is not always betrayal. It is not always incompatibility, and it is not always a lack of love. Sometimes it is something far simpler. The human mind adapts. What was once novel becomes familiar. What was once mysterious becomes known. What once triggered curiosity becomes predictable. And predictability changes emotional intensity. This is not a flaw in human nature. It is part of human nature. The same mechanism that allows people to recover from pain also causes them to adapt to pleasure. The extraordinary slowly becomes ordinary. The extraordinary face, the extraordinary voice, the extraordinary presence. Over time, familiarity softens the emotional impact. This is why attraction based solely on excitement often struggles to survive reality. Reality is repetitive. Life contains routines, responsibilities, stress, bills, disappointments, unexpected setbacks. No amount of chemistry can permanently eliminate those realities. Eventually, every relationship leaves the stage of fantasy and enters the stage of truth. And truth asks a different question, not how intensely do you feel, but who are you when the intensity fades? That question reveals character, and character is where attraction either deepens or dies, because beneath all physical attraction lies something far more important: psychological attraction, the attraction of one mind toward another, one spirit toward another. One character recognizing something valuable in another character. This form of attraction grows differently. It grows through observation, through consistency, through trust, through moments that seem insignificant at first. A difficult conversation handled with maturity, a promise kept when nobody was watching, a display of integrity when dishonesty would have been easier, a moment of strength during adversity, a moment of compassion during conflict. These moments rarely create fireworks, but they create admiration, and admiration is one of the strongest foundations of lasting attraction. The strange thing about admiration is that it often develops slowly, like a tree rather than a spark. A spark appears instantly. A tree requires time, roots, patience, growth. But when storms arrive, it is usually the tree that survives, not the spark. Modern culture often glorifies instant attraction, the dramatic encounter, the overwhelming chemistry, the impossible-to-ignore connection. And while those experiences certainly exist, they are not the whole story. Some of the deepest attractions emerge quietly, almost invisibly, two people gradually witnessing who the other person truly is. No performance, no illusion, no fantasy, just reality. And reality, when healthy, possesses its own kind of beauty. There is something profoundly attractive about knowing someone completely and still choosing them, not because they are perfect, but because they are real. The philosopher Kierkegaard once suggested that anxiety emerges from possibility, the endless awareness of what could happen. Attraction often begins there, in possibility, in imagination, in uncertainty. But love, respect, and genuine connection emerge elsewhere. They emerge through reality, through experience, through seeing both strengths and flaws, and remaining present anyway. This transition is where many people struggle, because fantasy asks very little of us. Reality asks everything. Fantasy allows projection. Reality demands acceptance. Fantasy creates perfection. Reality reveals humanity, and humanity is messy. Every person carries contradictions, strengths mixed with weaknesses, confidence mixed with insecurity, wisdom mixed with blind spots, kindness mixed with selfishness. No one escapes this complexity. The question is whether we can remain attracted to a real person after discovering they are not the fantasy we imagined. That is where maturity enters the picture, because immature attraction seeks perfection. Mature attraction seeks truth. Immature attraction asks, "How do you make me feel?" Mature attraction asks, "Who are you beneath appearances?" The difference may seem subtle, but it changes everything. A person obsessed with emotional highs will constantly chase novelty. A person seeking depth will pay attention to character. And character reveals itself slowly, not through words, through patterns, through choices, through behavior repeated over time. This is one reason emotionally mature individuals often become more attractive as they age, not necessarily because their appearance improves, but because their presence changes. Life teaches them things. Pain teaches them things. Failure teaches them things. Loss teaches them things. And if they are willing to learn, those experiences create depth. Depth creates wisdom. Wisdom creates emotional stability. And emotional stability is extraordinarily attractive in a chaotic world. Consider how many people spend their lives reacting to criticism, reacting to rejection, reacting to disappointment, reacting to fear. Their emotional state constantly shifts according to external circumstances. Then occasionally you meet someone different. Someone calm, someone grounded, someone who does not crumble under pressure, someone who remains composed when others panic. Their presence feels different, almost magnetic, not because they dominate the room, but because they are not dominated by it. This is one of the hidden connections between attraction and self-mastery. People are naturally drawn toward individuals who possess control over themselves, not control over others, control over themselves, their emotions, their impulses, their reactions, their choices. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed true power begins internally, not externally. A person who conquers their own fears is stronger than someone who merely conquers circumstances. And strength of character has always been attractive because strength creates trust. You know where the person stands. You know what they value. You know they will not collapse at the first sign of adversity. In a world filled with uncertainty, that reliability becomes deeply appealing. But there is another side to attraction that is rarely discussed. A darker side, the attraction to what feels familiar, even when familiarity is unhealthy. Human beings often mistake familiarity for compatibility. If a certain emotional dynamic dominated childhood, adulthood may unconsciously recreate it, not because it feels good, because it feels known. A person raised around emotional unpredictability may feel strangely drawn toward unpredictable relationships. A person raised around criticism may feel drawn toward critical partners. A person accustomed to emotional distance may feel attraction toward emotionally unavailable people. The pattern feels familiar, and familiarity can masquerade as attraction. This realization can be painful because it forces people to confront an uncomfortable possibility. Sometimes what feels intensely attractive is not healthy. Sometimes it is simply familiar. This is why self-awareness matters so much. Without self-awareness, people repeat patterns. With self-awareness, they begin recognizing them. And recognition creates freedom. Freedom to choose differently. Freedom to grow. Freedom to stop confusing old wounds with genuine connection. Carl Jung argued that until unconscious patterns become conscious, they will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. Few ideas capture attraction more accurately. People often speak about fate when describing relationships, but what appears to be fate may sometimes be psychology. Invisible psychological patterns influencing visible choices. The more aware you become, the more clearly those patterns emerge. You begin noticing why certain people affect you, why certain personalities attract you, why certain dynamics repeat themselves. And once you see the pattern, you are no longer completely controlled by it. You gain perspective, and perspective changes everything. Because attraction is not merely something that happens to you, it is also something you participate in. Your beliefs influence it. Your experiences influence it. Your insecurities influence it. Your values influence it. Your self-image influences it. The healthier your relationship with yourself becomes, the healthier your attractions often become as well. This leads to one of the greatest misconceptions in modern culture. Many people believe becoming attractive means learning how to attract others. In reality, becoming attractive often begins with becoming psychologically whole. The individual who desperately seeks validation broadcasts a different energy than the individual who genuinely values themselves. The individual who fears loneliness behaves differently from the individual who enjoys solitude. The individual who requires constant approval interacts differently from the individual who possesses internal confidence. These differences may seem invisible, yet people feel them. Human beings are extraordinarily sensitive to emotional states, even when they cannot explain what they are sensing. And perhaps this is why the most attractive people are often not those trying hardest to attract. They are busy living, growing, learning, creating, exploring, building meaningful lives. Their identity does not depend entirely upon being desired, and paradoxically, that independence often makes them more attractive because attraction thrives around life, vitality, purpose, authenticity, not desperation, not obsession, not need. One of the greatest ironies of attraction is that chasing it directly often pushes it away People become consumed by external approval, consumed by appearances, consumed by validation, and in doing so, they drift further from the qualities that create meaningful attraction in the first place: presence, confidence, integrity, self-respect, purpose. The things that truly draw people in are rarely the things most aggressively advertised. They are quieter than that, deeper than that, more difficult to fake. And perhaps that is why they matter, because what can be faked may attract attention, but only what is real can sustain connection. As life progresses, many people eventually discover a surprising truth. The people they remember most are not always the most beautiful, not always the most charismatic, not always the most exciting. Often they are the people who made them feel most alive, most understood, most accepted, most inspired. Those emotional experiences linger long after appearances fade, long after circumstances change, long after memories become blurred around the edges, because attraction leaves traces, not only in relationships, but in identity. The people who affect us often influence who we become. A meaningful connection can alter the direction of a life. A powerful attraction can reveal hidden parts of ourselves. A difficult heartbreak can expose emotional wounds that need healing. Every attraction teaches something, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones. Sometimes attraction teaches us what we value. Sometimes it teaches us what we lack. Sometimes it teaches us what we need to outgrow. And sometimes it teaches us who we are becoming. That may be the deepest psychological truth of all. Attraction is not merely about finding another person. It is about encountering yourself through another person. The fears you carry, the hopes you protect, the wounds you hide, the dreams you pursue, the identity you are trying to build. All of it becomes visible, reflected through the strange mirror of human connection. And perhaps that is why attraction remains such a mystery. Not because other people are impossible to understand, but because we are. Within every human being exists an entire universe. A landscape of memories, desires, regrets, fears, possibilities. No one fully understands themselves, yet attraction occasionally illuminates hidden corners of that inner world. For a moment, something dormant awakens, something forgotten speaks, something buried rises to the surface, and we call that feeling attraction. But maybe attraction is more than desire. Maybe it is recognition. The recognition of something meaningful, something missing, something waiting to be discovered, not only in another person, but within ourselves. And that is why the deepest forms of attraction are never really about possession. They are about revelation, the revelation of character, the revelation of truth, the revelation of hidden aspects of human nature. Because in the end, the most attractive people are not necessarily the most beautiful. They are the most real, the most grounded, the most self-aware, the most alive. And perhaps the greatest secret of human attraction is this: people are rarely drawn toward perfection. They are drawn toward authenticity, toward depth, toward presence, toward the rare individual who is comfortable enough with themselves to stop performing and simply exist. In a world filled with masks, that authenticity feels almost magnetic. And maybe that is because beneath every attraction lies the same silent longing, not merely to be desired, but to be known, not merely to be admired, but to be understood, not merely to be chosen, but to be seen, truly seen. And when that happens, even briefly, attraction becomes something far greater than chemistry. It becomes a glimpse into the deepest truths of what it means to be human. And perhaps that is what we have been searching for all along.